Well, hello and welcome to Friday's edition of Movie News. We're not doing a movie review tonight, John. We're going to save that for next week when we catch up on some of the new releases. As you can see, next to me is John C. Walsh. We're doing one cam tonight. We're trying something different.
Yeah, because the light packed up, Stephen.
Our hand was forced, to be honest with you. But, John, we're going to kick off the show here on Friday night. Disney's Mulan has just been released on Disney+. Be catching up on that over the weekend so we can do a review, but some of the reviews are already in from the critics, and what we're going to do here is, this is on Cinema Blend, we're going to just work our way through some of them, or maybe all of them.
And I'm going to dabble with the graphical overlay, Stephen, and see if this wide shot will fit in. So let's check it just now. It looks okay, Stephen.
Let's do this. So
it looks okay. It was modified before the show.
Coming in from 4 Stars, the website, they say Mulan is a visual spectacle and top-notch choreography is a stunning achievement on its own.
Yes,
so
I'll get that down.
I think most of these reviews are actually very positive. There's a few nitpickers in there, John, but not many. Fresh Fiction says, Caro, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and company have also captured radiance and strength in the ensemble's performance. Lou distinctly brings out her tough character's softer notes of grace, gumption and vulnerability. Yeah. She's a magnetic dynamo with impressive dexterity, holding her own in action scenes as well as the emotionally driven ones.
Steve, we've seen that in the trailers. Yeah. She did look very impressive. Yeah. It looks like a really strong performance from the leading actor. She looked as though she had some tender moments with her family, her father in particular. Yeah. Then when she was thrust out, she was held back and she had to be the sort of, what was it? It wasn't Arwen. What was she called? The Rohirrim. Can't believe I forgot that name. Absolutely shocking. Eowyn. She was sort of forced to be a female and not go out and fight. She had to stick to these rigid traditions, and she wanted to go out and fight with the men. It's the same here. That's the similar vibes I'm getting. And she had real strength, real gumption, but there was a grace and a vulnerability to it as well, and you got that from the trailers. Yeah. And that's why I was so excited about this movie, Stephen, and that's why I'm so happy to see these early reviews ticking some of the boxes that I wanted to see in this movie. Yeah. The gumption, the vulnerability, the grace. Looks like they've managed to pick out the good little elements from the movie from in terms of performances, aesthetics and stuff like that in the trailer, and give you a sense of what you're getting in this movie as a whole. I
don't think we can forget as well, John, the decision that had to be made on this film's release, on its distribution as well, was a big decision from the studio, and hopefully it is paying off. You know, these early reviews are very positive, but this is one coming in from Screen Rant. Yes. At times, Carol's film can feel as if it's checking off scenes from the animated film, including them simply in an effort not to offend those who love Disney's tale, but that means the new material isn't given its due. Now, that's... We've talked about this in the past, John, with the likes of The Lion King and trying to find that balance and to keep in the fans that love the animated one and don't want too many alterations. In this case, slightly different because it is a more legendary tale that they're having to tell here, and it's trying to find that sort of
don't know what I've done there.
Even ground, to really go out and cover a broad audience and try to please everyone. Yeah. Sometimes that can actually fail the film, unfortunately.
Stephen, I spoke about it before. They're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't, Disney. If they make a shot-for-shot remake of the original animated movie, be it 60 years ago, be it 20 years ago, like I believe with Mulan, I think it was the 90s the original animated version came out. If they do a shot-for-shot remake, it will get branded lazy, unimaginative. Yeah. There's no originality in Hollywood. There's no originality within the executive boardroom of Disney. They're just giving us a soulless husk of a movie. Why watch this when we can go back and watch the original? Likewise, if they go, or alternatively, if they go and do some different things, they omit some of the other characters that were in the original movie, they take out some of the musical numbers, perhaps elements as a whole, they're also criticised. This is sacrilege. Yeah. You're taking out one of our favourite characters. We're not going to watch this movie. But if they put them in and done a shot-for-shot remake, those very individuals would be absolutely destroying Disney on social media, saying, we don't want to watch this, it's just like the original, we'll go and watch the original. So they can't win.
No,
Disney.
This is it. They've got to make decisions, John, and stick by them, unfortunately. But Nerdist felt that the focus on the new means that character relationships from the original film are not given enough time to develop this time around. This is what they had to say. With the focus on the new and unnecessary characters, the film fails to highlight the other important characters in Mulan's story. These include her colleagues Yao, Ling, Chin Po and Cricket, which is really a loss for the audience. Throughout the film, Mulan has moments interacting with her fellow soldiers, but never more than exchanging occasional vocal jabs. The camaraderie never feels earned. That's quite sad, actually.
It's a difficult balance, though.
Yeah.
Because she is the title lead. It's all about her. And you don't want to dominate the movie with side characters and have them overshadow your title or lead. Again, if they'd done that, they'd say they're overshadowing a young female actor.
Yeah.
They're trying to intrude on her performance. We've seen this with even Tenet, Elizabeth Debicki. There's people saying that they didn't handle that character correctly, that she was made to look... I don't want to spoil it, Stephen, because you've not seen the movie yet. We're going to see it again on Sunday, so I'm not going to spoil it, but there's people criticising the way that female performance was handled, so again, you can never win. I didn't see it myself. I thought she was great.
More positive coming in from the Daily Beast feels that the new film is one of the better remakes because it largely fixes real problems with the original film. This Mulan's path is one of course correction, leading more space and with it majesty to the characters at battle-worn hero's arc. There's more sincere celebration of the Chinese history and virtues at the heart of the tale, and most importantly and finally, agency for Hua Mulan? I cannot say
Hua
that.
Mulan, yeah.
I really should stay off the beers, John.
Stephen, I don't have to be on beers to not pronounce Chinese names correctly. It's very difficult. They're on another universe to us, Stephen, with the way they pronounce certain things. Subtle little changes in intonation from pretty much an identical word completely changes the way that the meaning of the word, essentially. So I'm not going to even attempt to tan you for not being able to pronounce a Chinese name, because I can't do it either.
Polygon takes issue with one of the additions to the story, the concept of chi. While it is used to help explain Mulan as a character, it ends up potentially taking away one of the character's best qualities from the animated film. They said this: though everyone possesses chi, it exists everywhere. Mulan is overflowing with it, and that excess of chi is what makes her special, rather than her resolve in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds.
Yeah, Stephen, that sounds like the Force.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker was very strong in the Force, and that ultimately was why he was able to overcome the Death Star at the end of A New Hope. This sort of innate ability, gift via the Skywalker lineage. So I'm not too fussed by that. I suppose it does make the title a lead, obviously Mulan, slightly less remarkable, and that it's this sort of mystical force which is making her special, but I don't care about that. You need to explain why this young character is able to do the things that she does, and it can't just be through raw physicality, because she's a young female, and young females usually can't do things that young males can do, because young males are usually much bigger and much stronger. That's just a fact of life. So chi, if that explains it, then brilliant. Stephen, look, it's very difficult for me. I don't know about you, but I haven't seen the original Mulan. It's one of the few Disney animated
years ago
movies which I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Therefore, I can't really compare between this and the old one. That could be a positive, but it's also a negative in the sense that some of these references are going right over my head. The character names, the chi thing, and stuff like that. I don't know what it is, because I've never seen the original movie. We will, of course, sort that out this weekend. We will be watching Mulan this weekend, so
I can't wait, John. I've already purchased it. My wife and my daughter was already watching it before I came over to do this show, and I saw the glimpses of the first 10 minutes, and the visuals itself are absolutely amazing. But NPR remark that this attempt has resulted in a somewhat muddled film with confusing messages. I was more disappointed by how the script treats fairly intuitive cultural ideas about a person's chi and the importance of family honour, as if they were different foreign concepts that needed to be repeatedly explained to the viewer. So, the Associated Press said this: there is more good than bad in Mulan, and we should be so lucky to get a gorgeous and inspiring war epic that is suitable for children to watch. Mulan might even inspire some kids to dip their toes into all that Asian cinema has to offer, which would be the best possible outcome. What's your thoughts on that, John?
Stephen, I completely agree with that. If this is going to introduce a new generation of cinema fans, movie fans, whatever you want to call it, to the majesty of some of these Asian movies, then more the power to Mulan for being able to open that door for these new generation of fans. We've watched loads of Asian movies, Stephen, over the years, and I'm blown away time and again by the Korean movies, the Chinese movies, the Japanese movies. What they're able to accomplish, it feels different to Western movies.
Yeah.
There's a slickness to it, there's a sort of clinical...
There's an efficiency,
yeah,
isn't
yeah,
there?
it's clinical in the way that
yeah.
they tell the story, the way that they touch upon satirical concepts. You've seen it with Bong Joon-ho and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Boon Jong-ho, I can never get that guy's name correct. I always mix it up. It's the same with David John Washington and John David Washington. It is John David
What was the one I said
Washington.
last night? Neil Patrick Harris. I called him Neil Thomas Patrick or
So
something.
it's bloody double barrel names. They
Yeah.
screw with my brain, Stephen. But yeah, I mean, I'm always blown away by the Asian movies, and it's that particular element about this that made me intrigued by this. I've enjoyed all of the Disney animated remakes. I've enjoyed even the sort of scene by scene remakes, the likes of Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast. Went to see them all, Stephen. I went opening night for Lion King. I was about to say Sinbad there. I don't know why. I'd love to see a Sinbad remake, clearly.
Yeah.
I went opening
Stop
night.
motion. Yeah, definitely.
Stephen, I was a big fan of Sinbad growing up. That was always on the TV. And those horrendous sort of rancor stop motion effects, it's something about it I really enjoyed. But yeah, I mean, I've watched all... I'm going to completely go away from that tangent. I've always enjoyed these animated remakes. I'm not on the sort of train of thought that they're lazy, unimaginative. They're just re-enhancing them for a new generation who will not go back and watch these classic animated cartoon ones. They won't do it. They need to have visual eye candy to keep them stimulated in this era of amazing big CGI movies and things like Secret Life of Pets and Paddington and stuff like that. So I enjoy them all, but this in particular, the blend of Asian stuff, the music, the visuals, the cultural things. I love Coco as well for that reason, exploring Mexico and their attraction to dead and the festival of the dead and stuff like that. So I love immersing myself in other cultures. So that's a big positive for me.
So do I, John. But we're going to move on anyway because we are going to review this film early next
Never put
week.
the graphic up, god damn you.
That's it, can put it on now. There we go. That's what we were just talking about for the last 15-20 minutes, folks. But yeah, we'll review it. We'll watch it over the weekend, John, and then we'll do a review of that for next week anyway.
Absolutely.
So we'll move on to our next topic. It's Warner Brothers' response to the Batman's COVID-19 shutdown. Now, we covered this last night, John, as it was breaking, I think. Certainly when we were doing the show, it was happening, and then we had to come back on and do that little short 7-minute news coverage of Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, well, other channels do it, so why shouldn't we jump on the bandwagon?
I think at the time we did mention that Warner Brothers weren't commenting on it, but there's a little bit in here from Screen Rant anyway, and Warner Media executives reveals that they're doing what they're doing after Robert Pattinson's contracted the coronavirus, causing the Batman production to shut down for at least 2 weeks. Well, at most 2 weeks, I should say, because that's what the process is. You've got to self-isolate for 14 days, 10 to 14 days, like we had to, John.
Yeah, I was over it after 10.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Robert will be over it after 5 or something. He's a much fitter guy than me.
So
surely.
Deadline asked Warner Media Studios and network boss Ann Sarnoff about the steps they've taken regarding the matter. According to the executive, they've halted production for the Batman and they're investigating what happened. She admits, however, that beyond that they don't know how much about the circumstances that led to this. She said, "We're still in the middle of investigating what the situation. We're pausing temporarily for now until we have more information, but we have all the protocols set up to do contact tracing and hopefully get back up into production very soon," which means they're going to have to go through the whole cast that have been involved over the last few weeks and the whole crew as well and get them all tested. But that's just what happens.
Well,
It happens in football, so it happens in films.
And Stephen, thankfully this has all happened after the initial peaks of coronavirus in the UK and stuff like that. There's a sense of maybe more competency surrounding the handling of the pandemic now. I say a sense of more because it's Boris Johnson, it's Rishi Sunak and all of the other absolute goons who are running the country, Matt Hancock, so you can never be entirely certain, but they have initiated some guidelines, some protocols behind the scenes for cast and crew to sort of loosely follow. I mean, I understand it's impossible to keep 2 meters apart behind the scenes when you're trying to shoot a movie with presumably intimate scenes, But it will be more controlled. The cast and the crew will be spaced out when they're not in the middle of doing a take. You'd presume the director, Matt Reeves, and the cast will be, or the crew will be much further back. So hopefully this has been curtailed to just Robert Pattinson himself. If not, maybe a couple of other actors he's came in closer contact with. Hopefully it will not be delayed for overly long. He will isolate for 14 days. He'll be back better than ever, like we were. Can't speak for you, but I feel better now than ever.
Yeah, definitely.
After having it, I'm doing weight training and everything. I've got so much energy. Hopefully Robert's the same. He starts packing the muscle on and we get back to doing the Batman again and we get this goddamn movie out. But look, it's good to see that Warner Brothers have come out and sort of spoken about it, because there was sort of vacuum in leadership from Warner Brothers last night when this was breaking. It was coming from, what was it, Vanity Fair and stuff like that were breaking the news that a cast member had been diagnosed with COVID. Then it was revealed afterwards that it was Robert Pattinson. There was some vacuum in Warner Brothers that the sort of, executive...
I think John, probably the studio wanted, well, maybe that as well, but I think as well they maybe wanted to look at the severity of it as well. We know that Robert Pattinson's contracted it, but I think maybe the studio maybe holding back just to see how bad it was before they wanted to put an official statement out. And
Stephen, that's probably the correct thing to do, because obviously if he does get a slightly more virulent strain of it, if you like, then you don't want to put out a rush statement and then you have to backtrack and say, oh no, look, things have developed, this has happened, and then you have to...
Another actor's got it.
It looks a little bit amateurish, so they've done the correct thing. They've checked to see if the actor's okay. Obviously he's doing fine, man. We've seen Tom Hanks had it, much older than Robert Pattinson. Dwayne Johnson's had it, Idris Elba's had it. A whole array of actors, famous people in general, footballers over here, athletes. They tend to get over it quicker than the average plebeian out in the street, because they are adhering to much better diets. They have nutritionists around them 24/7. They've got the best access to the best medical systems and stuff like that. So they tend to get over it much quicker. So hopefully, as I says, he gets over it within the next 10 days or so. Has to isolate for that further 3-4 days, and then he gets right back into the set with no lasting sort of impact from it, because there is people getting things lingering for months. Hopefully he's not one of them, and we get this Batman movie out sooner.
Well, I was going to say that, John, from a more selfish point of view, let's get this Batman film out before it starts turning into a New Mutants scenario.
Gambit, was it?
Gambit,
Channing Tatum still not in production. Jesus
That's
Christ.
not happening, John. I think
Channing's the perfect guy for it as well.
He is,
He's from New Orleans. The character's from New Orleans.
Exactly, but I think we need to let that one go. It's just not going to happen.
Especially with Disney now in charge. Yeah. Pretty sure he was a Fox X-Men sort of mutant character, wasn't he?
Appeared in Wolverine, the Origins one. The one that you used to like. Yeah,
the one I used to like, apparently. I forgot about that, thank God. Absolute dog shit, that movie.
Facebook memories is a beautiful thing.
Stephen, I will admit readily, I was an absolute you-know-what. It begins with a T, ends with an R. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 letters. Back in the day, I didn't have a clue. I wasn't as refined of a film fanatic as I am now.
John,
now I'm a snob.
I went to the cinema to see it and I loved it at the time. So.
Was that the one with, what was his face?
Ryan Reynolds was on it.
Ryan Reynolds. I remember Ryan Reynolds.
He was a butchered version of Deadpool. Yeah, it was terrible.
His name, the actor.
Yeah, it was. I can see his face. He played his brother. That's him. Yeah, it was his brother, and he played.
Ended on top of a huge chimney thing, didn't it?
Terrible, absolutely shocking. I wish they all fell into that chimney. That and the director.
Jesus Christ.
But we'll move on, John. Very quickly.
It?
Yeah, I can't remember. I've tried to erase that. It's like the holiday special, from Star Wars.
Oh, Jesus.
Just don't believe it exists anymore. But something that sadly, John, may or may not exist in the upcoming future is, of course, Black Panther 2. This was scheduled to start filming in March 2021. Black Panther 2 was set to begin filming in March of next year, prior to the tragic passing of franchise star Chadwick Boseman last week. Now, we've kind of held off for the last 7 days, really. It was because we were doing our Enter the Dragon review last week. And
eerily, Stephen, speaking about Bruce Lee, and his legacy and what he could have been if he hadn't tragically passed away untimely at the age of 32. And just as that was happening, Chadwick Boseman passed away as well. And it's almost like a hauntingly similar situation. A young guy at the peak of his game. He's only just gone from strength to strength. He's doing different genres, tackling all these historical figures. A really charismatic, intelligent guy.
Also, overcoming these racial hurdles as well. You know, very similar to Bruce Lee, what he had to obviously endure back in the 1970s, or the early 70s, that is. But today, THR published an article discussing Disney and Marvel's future without the actor. In this piece, it was revealed Black Panther 2 was supposed to begin filming in March 2021. Boseman even planned on preparing for the upcoming movie starting this month. Tragically, that will not come to pass. It's very hard reading this, John.
Yeah.
Black Panther 2's original filming start date makes sense as it follows Marvel's usual production release timetable. Considering the recent tragedy, the sequel is almost guaranteed to not start work at that time. Right now, Boseman's family, colleagues in Hollywood and fans are all mourning the actor's loss, though Marvel will likely make some sort of announcement regarding Black Panther 2 at some point. It's not the priority right now and shouldn't be for a while.
No.
Can't disagree with that.
No, absolutely, Stephen. It isn't the priority. Also, the priority is respecting the family, respecting the name of the man himself. He was a titanic figure in this MCU. He came in 3/4 of a way into the Infinity Saga, and he already made an impact, Stephen. Immediately we spoke about it in our sort of tribute, remembering the great man himself, and obviously his impact in Civil War. He was already a charismatic guy with real screen presence. He was dominating the screen on the same sort of stage as the likes of Chris Evans and Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, played by the great Robert Downey Jr. That speaks volumes about what the guy was bringing as an actor. He was at the absolute pinnacle of his game at that point. Some would say it was in 42 and things like that, but I mean, this was different. This was a really big role for him, and it had so much importance for the black community and for representation on the screen in general. So it was, in some way, it was elevated above 42, which was a beautiful movie in itself, obviously, but a different movie. But yeah, I mean, Stephen, it's tragic, man. It really is. We obviously spoke about it, just the tragedy of losing the man, double-edged sword, and how it's obviously what we've lost as an actor, what we've lost as a social justice figure fighting for the underprivileged. A very good human being, A very good human being. I watched Kevin Smith today, his, what is it, the Fat Man and something, I can't recall the name of the show, but he spoke glowingly, and he was right in what he says, and that the guy, and actors in general, and these prominent entertainers, you don't know these people personally, but such is the impact that they have in your life through their performance and the artistry that they bring to you. You're genuinely saddened when these people go. It has a profound effect. And he went off and and he went off and he spoke about the loss of other figures when he was younger, and how this will be this generation who grew up watching Black Panther, and this guy, the people he inspired the most, this will be hurting them horrendously at the moment. So it's a huge loss. And Stephen, we didn't really speak about it. I suppose we will delve into it shortly, but I genuinely do not know what the best route is for Marvel and Disney going forward with this character, with this movie. I mean, Campea spoke about it, and he did do a really good job with Burnett of breaking down the potential options moving forward. Recasting, perhaps CGI, writing them out of the story completely, and maybe passing the baton over to a Shuri or someone else. You're limited with what you can do with this story.
John,
now the man is gone.
Decision they make on those examples you just gave is going to have an effect on the legacy of the character. It's going to have an effect on the legacy of the actor as well. Yeah. Regardless of what you do, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. No. But they will have to make a decision. I don't know how you can do an entire film with CG. No. It might be in poor taste as well for a lot of people. Recasting. Who wants to really take up that role unless they're on the role? Now, obviously, someone like Michael B. Jordan, if he had not appeared in the first Black Panther film, possibly he would do that as honouring his friend, his best friend, for, I think, over 30 years. Maybe not as much as 30 years. But, Michael B. Jordan is very upset about this news. Naturally, I think he's actually went into some sort of a, depression about it.
Doesn't surprise me, Stephen, because he did keep it quiet from even his closest confidants and friends. It was only his real close family. I presume the likes of Feige perhaps knew something that he probably imparted it upon them, because he had to prepare them for the future. If he knew that it took a turn for the worse and it was looking unlikely that he was going to beat it, then he would have had to have maybe have imparted something onto Feige, Disney in general, so they could start putting in contingency plans for this franchise moving forward. And obviously that sounds sort of callous saying that moving forward, because the guy's just passed away, but that's the realistic situation, or the realisticness of the situation.
The situation is going to have to come up.
Yeah,
at
it's
some
like
point.
George Harrison rightly said, Stephen, and it's a beautiful lyric. Life flows on within you and without you, and it's absolutely true. Life
And you've got
is
to
a
remember,
force. It's like the force. It flows
Chadwick
within you.
Boseman would want this character to continue in some fashion, some form, whether that is a recast or not, whether that is passing the baton on to one of the existing characters as well to don that mask, you know, John. But
Stephen, Tyrone Magnus, he got absolutely tanned for the video he put up.
Right, okay.
Saying, should the Black Panther be recast? He get tanned for the title. I don't think people actually went in and watched the movie, the actual video, because I went in and watched it, and he was absolutely bang on in what he says. Look, the character can't die with one actor.
No.
Just like Superman didn't die with Christopher Reeve, just like the Joker didn't die with Heath Ledger. You cannot retire a character which has inspired so many people to be better than what they are, to look to the stars and hope that they one day can follow in those footsteps. The best thing to honour the man's legacy is to let it lie for a while, pass the baton over to another character, and then maybe 4, 5, 6 years down the road you can then bring back the Black Panther in some vein or another within the MCU, because the beauty of the character is, Stephen, that it is almost like Doctor Who, and that it's not regenerating, but you have various different iterations of the Black Panther character. It's almost like an ancestral passing of the baton.
Well, it was established in the first movie, John.
Yeah, his father was the original Black Panther, T'Chaka. He passed it on to T'Challa. So if they maybe write in that T'Challa's passed away in some vein in the story, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they can let it lie for a movie or two, and then they can pass it on to someone else. And who it was, M'Baku was the other guy, the Mountain King. Maybe he can come in and take over, and that's something they can pass it on. I don't know how they're going to handle it. They have to handle it tenderly.
And at the end of the day, they don't have to rush it either. You know, they can leave it a few years. They can get back to this and revisit this at any point in time. I think that's probably the great sealer. But we'll move on anyway, John, because I don't think I've got much more to add to that other than what you just said. And I totally agree with that as well. But this is coming in from Screen Rant. The New Mutants messes up the X-Men timeline one last time. Now, the Fox's X-Men movies have a notoriously confusing timeline, and the New Mutants manages to scramble it in one more time as the franchise says goodbye. Now, I thought they were back on track after they did First Class, John. I thought that was a great film. It was like a soft reboot, if you like, recasting all the characters that we know and love to a younger cast, and it worked brilliantly. It's one of your favourite films. I know that of the X-Men films, and a great villain. And the next film was Days of Future Past.
It was a good movie as well.
Where they try to obviously tidy up the monstrosity that was X-Men 3, The Last Stand. Which I thought they handled as best they could. It was almost like a J.J. Abrams Rise of Skywalker tried to put everything back together again as best they could in a very short space of time, and I think they handled it well as best they could. But now I'm going to read this a little bit, John, because both you and I have not seen the New Mutants as of yet, but it does say here, while undergoing testing, Danielle Moonstar experiences a vision of another mutant facility under the control of Essex Corp. The Transigen facility in Mexico where Laura/X-23 was created. The vision includes footage from Logan of young mutants being experimented upon and trained to use their powers in combat. Now, that doesn't sound too bad, but this is where the X-Men timeline gets scrambled again. Logan was set in the year 2029 in a world where Professor X had accidentally wiped out almost all of the X-Men team members a year previously. The New Mutants director Josh Boone has said that his movie takes place in the present day. It doesn't make any sense. And a discussion, unless it was like a, what do you call that when you see into the future, a premonition. The New Mutants, and a discussion among the movie's Teen Mutants confirms that the X-Men are still around and active. Okay. Moonstar has plenty of powers in the comics, but none of them involve the ability to see into the future. She is able to see the Transigen facility by pulling images from Dr. Ray's mind. So how did the scenes from a movie set a decade in the future end up in her vision? This kind of sums up the whole handling of the X-Men franchise for the last 20 years.
It's confusing me.
The last 20 years. The first two X-Men films were fantastic, excellent. Some of the best comic book films you'll get, you know, and I like to revisit them every now and again. First Class was maybe not as good as those first two, but it was certainly a really good film.
Yeah, it was a sort of renaissance for the franchise.
Yeah, I think
rebooting it with younger versions.
Matthew Vaughn did a fantastic job on the film.
Yeah.
And then you get Days of Future Past, which we both went to see in the cinema, and I think we were both entertained and satisfied with the conclusion of that. And then somewhere down the line, they messed
when
up.
I crashed my Mini Cooper, Stephen, before we went to that. Yeah,
that crossed my mind when I was saying that there, John.
It was the very first showing, I believe, or one of the first showings.
Yeah.
So we were scrambling to get there.
We then get Apocalypse, and then we get Dark Phoenix. 2 bad films, and by all accounts, New Mutants is very inconsistent as well, John. So it kind of sums up the whole sort of history of Fox's handling of X-Men to me. I don't know what your thoughts are, John, but that description there, I think that explains it very well, and where the confusion lies, and how the timeline has been scrambled once again.
Yeah, Stephen, I think ultimately it doesn't matter, because this is the
no,
end.
It doesn't actually.
This is the end. Disney are not following on from this Josh Boone movie. They're not giving them a trilogy. As I've said time and again, it's the canary down the mine in this movie. They're flinging this under the bus onto the rail tracks like one of those classic silent movies.
John,
but the damsel in distress is tied.
They still think they might appear in the MCU at some point, some of these actors.
Not a chance.
No way.
These are done.
No way.
These are finished. Finished, as the Ayrshire people in this country like you say. You're not appearing in the MCU. Just like Charlie Cox, sadly, is not coming to the MCU as Daredevil. And that's a real tragedy, because he is pretty damn good. I've not seen the movie, Stephen. I'm speaking out of tongue there, perhaps, or out of tone, I think is the correct terminology. Not tongue, I don't know what that even means. I'll lay off the beers, John. So I'm being harsh in a sense. I've not seen what this movie's bringing. I've not seen the performances. By all accounts, Anya Taylor-Joy's pretty damn decent. The cast in general are pretty damn decent. It's just the story it kind of lacks. It's a sort of painted by numbers story that draws influence from various different other pop cultural references, movie references that have came in the past. So it's lacking. And then you add this into the mix, the mixing pot, if you like. This sort of scrambling and jumbling up the timeline. Does he not? I mean, this guy's supposed to be a fan of the content. Does he not go back and research timelines, where the characters are falling, what the previous movies in this interconnected Fox universe have established, and then realise that this is putting everything out of sync again? He's destroying the work that's came before, essentially. Why the hell would you not research that? I'll tell you why you wouldn't do it. Because he's a man who knew he was on a sugly peg. And that even if the Fox merger didn't go through with Disney, that this movie was dead. It was a dead man walking, MIA, dead on arrival, whatever you want to call it. Because Fox, as we spoke about recently, just weren't happy with this movie. They would have seen it completely reshot, scene by scene.
They didn't like the first draft of it, John.
Yeah.
You're right, they did want to reshoot the whole thing from beginning to end.
So he was dead, so he wasn't giving a shit.
Yeah, I think as well that you got to understand as well that perhaps maybe the decision to include some footage from Logan may not have been in his hands. Studio interference is not a new thing, and with the success of Logan, they probably did think, let's incorporate that story into this without actually thinking what they were doing. And remembering, I know that Logan was made 4 years ago now, but it's not that hard to recall when it was set.
And it was a very good movie.
It was an excellent film, yeah.
It's very easy to recall what happened in that movie, Stephen. So it was the laziness from Josh Boone. I hope he gets his shit together in time for this Stand re-adaptation.
Or I'll just go back to the 1990s DVDs, John.
And I'll just go back to Stephen King in the 1980s when he was slurring his words because he was absolutely out his nut on alcohol, because he was an alcoholic, Stephen King. It was my first picture as a director. I kind of liked it. I kind of like Stephen King from back then. He's a master. But we can't speak about alcoholics. We're Scottish. Come on, Glaswegian, no less. We get an issue with drink over here.
Well,
and I've got a family. But my family's got a real issue with drink, Stephen, as you know.
Not you and I, though.
Stephen, if I didn't work, I'd have a real issue with drink. Believe me.
Because you wouldn't have the money to buy it. That would be a big problem.
You recall us on holiday, Stephen.
3
bottles of whiskey in about 10 days.
Lidl special.
I've got a problem with drink, believe me.
Can't remember what it's called.
It was White Castle or something.
It was good at the time.
Whitechapel.
But we'll move swiftly on anyway to our final topic of tonight, John. It's the Godfather 3 new version with new beginning and ending, officially releasing. A new version of the Godfather Part 3 is being released, fully restored with a new beginning and ending, and using the original title, that's an important thing in this article as well. Now, Paramount Pictures announced they would be releasing a new version of the movie under the title Mario Puzo's The Godfather, Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone, which is the one Coppola initially chose before studio executives simplified it for a theatrical release. Coppola has fully restored the movie alongside his editors, including a new beginning, ending, and alternate take of some shots, as well as new musical cues. Coppola calls it a more appropriate conclusion to the Corleone story. You can see more comments from the director on the project below, which I'm going to read. Mario Puzo's The Godfather, Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone is an acknowledgement of Mario's and my preferred title and our original intentions for what became The Godfather Part 3. For this version of the finale, I created a new beginning and ending and rearranged some scenes, shots and music cues. With these changes and the restored footage and sound, to me it's more appropriate conclusion to The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, and I'm thankful to Jim Giannopoulos and Paramount for allowing me to revisit this. So we're getting another director's cut here, John. Something that it's quite natural, it's quite normal for studios then to take over, and want their vision in place from directors, world-renowned directors like Francis Ford Coppola. But it's good to see that he's went back. We've seen it with the likes of Richard Donner for his Superman sequel. He went back and rejigged it a bit, got the John Williams score back in there.
Sly Stallone's came back and doing Rocky
4, yeah.
So
it seems to be a thing. And maybe David Goyer will still have that Suicide Squad revisit, who knows.
Stephen, man, look, this intrigues me tremendously because, as you know, big fan of the first two Godfather movies. I actually own the Coppola edition, Blu-ray edition of the movies. I have never watched Part 3 because fellow movie burner Kevin put me off it. He's watched all of them and he says it's just not worth your time watching the movie. It's a bore fest and the quality is demonstrably worse than the first two movies. Now, the first one for me is one of the greatest movies ever made. The journey that Michael Corleone goes on in that movie, Al Pacino, fresh-faced young guy, straight from war, innocent, not connected in the family business at all. What he turns into later on, it's one of the greatest transitions from a character in a single movie I've ever seen in my entire life. The second one almost eclipses it, but it doesn't quite for me, but it is still an utterly magnificent movie. Robert De Niro comes in as Vito Corleone. Unbelievable the way that he handles the sort of switching in timelines. I don't know why I've never watched the third one, but I'm glad I haven't because I didn't realise about studio interference, this bastardised version. So this intrigues me that we're now getting the almost Snyder cut meets Coppola meets Godfather 3, and that it's the original vision of Coppola and the original vision of Mario Puzo.
What do you think of the title, John? Because it does say here, it might be a major spoiler in the film, that it reveals Michael Corleone's death, but however the title can be changed as there is nothing to spoil 3 decades later.
No, there isn't, Stephen.
It's an old film.
I mean, I've not seen it, but it wouldn't surprise me if he dies because it was going that way. In the trilogy, he started off a vibrant, young, fresh-faced guy. He had everything. Then he assumes the role as the Godfather, and he just goes into a decline mentally, physically. He doesn't trust anyone. And I can see that transitioning into the third movie and him getting worse and worse, becoming even more isolated. And the only way for that to end is for the character to die. So I've not even seen the movie, and it's not a spoiler, because if you watch the first two, you can see where the man's going. He's going down a bad path. So I'm delighted with this. I'm delighted to see it getting remastered. It's another classic movie that's getting reshot and done up for the modern era. It will look indistinguishable from movies that are releasing just now. And such is the style of the movie. It's not CGI heavy and stuff like that, so it will scrub up very well. And the fact that he's introducing new shots, rearranged scenes, music cues, and it's his original intended vision for the character and for the movie, that's all the better for me. It's not like the Terminator 2, Jim Cameron stuff that he was doing, sorting little anomalies, CGI things. This is actual serious structural changes in the movie, and that can only be a good thing, and I'm immensely excited to finally sit down and watch the conclusion to the Godfather trilogy. So yeah, I've not got much more to add though, Stephen.
I'm done.
You're done? Well, I'm done as well. What the hell do you guys make about the 5 topics we spoke about on tonight's show? What's your thoughts on those initial reviews of Disney's Mulan? Of course, it just hit VOD rental on Disney Plus today. They are seemingly in agreement widely that this is a visual masterpiece, but there is little elements which are annoying, the cheap things and stuff like that. Have you seen the movie? What is your thoughts on it? Do you echo the sentiments of the critics, or do you disagree and you think it's just an all-round great movie? What do you make about Warner Brothers coming out and responding to the whole COVID-19 Robert Pattinson thing? You think it's a good thing, a bad thing? You can comment below and let us know what your thoughts are. What do you make about the whole Black Panther thing? It's scheduled to start filming next year in March, but obviously with the untimely demise of the great Chadwick Boseman not to be. What do you think should happen with the character? Should it be recast, CGI'd, written out of the story completely? You can share your thoughts down below. Finally, what do you make about New Mutants jumbling up the X-Men timeline again, and the Godfather 3 getting remastered, restructured into the complete vision of the original sort of Coppola vision for the movie? Coppola cut, yes, that just rings off the tongue better. If you've got anything to say about any of the topics we've spoke about on the show tonight, you can comment below. Let us know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. You can also like the video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see us discussing movies like this again, movie news, over the course of the following months, years, hopefully, if we're still here. And if you do, you'll see us back on Monday for another MB. No, it'll be an MBE review. We'll be reviewing Tenet and then probably Disney's Mulan, funnily enough. Bye-bye, guys. Maybe. No, we'll not be bye-bye. There you go. Bye-bye.